The Center for Technology Innovation is a place where science, engineering, and imagination come together. It is a state-of-the-art environment, an inspiring place where old ways are challenged and new ways are developed and proven. It is a place where Baker Hughes helps to shape the future of the largest industry in the world. But within this environment of achievement and discovery lie those same dangers that exist in the field.
We were in there and I was filling that casing up with water, and all of a sudden we heard a loud, sound like something exploded. When I came out, Junior was on the ground, Robert was on the ground, and the tool was on the ground.
It was a shock to everybody, and it was quiet for a while, and then everybody asked it, was everybody okay? And but yeah, the ones that were there that saw it, yeah, it put a fear into them, and it made them realize, that we do a lot of dangerous things around here, and lifting being one of them.
The first thing that goes through my mind is anyone hurt? I've had, I guess, the last role I had was operational, and you do get calls occasionally in the middle of the night to report that something's occurred, and the first thing that comes to your mind is anyone hurt?
Well, at first, you don't really grasp the magnitude of it. You get a phone call, we've had an incident. And so then your brain is racing to, okay, do we have somebody severely injured? Is there potential fatality? Is it somebody just have a nick and a scrape? To what magnitude? So people try to describe it to you, but it doesn't become real until you get to the scene of the incident, or in this case, see a video.
I was shocked, knowing that we could have not went home that day. And I was mad at myself because I've been taught to do so, to check everything, especially when it pertains to lifting.
We hooked it up, made sure we had a good line on the back end of the casing to hold the weight of the tool as it went inside the cell. And got it up in there, and then the tools began to fall because of the collar wasn't tightened down on the casing properly. And then it slipped and came down. As it did, it pushed the overhead crane back with the load on it and outside the cell, and it just fell straight down.
So now that we know what happened, let's look at some of the contributing factors that led to the incident. Factor 1, it was a busy day.
We're running a little thin of employees, but it wasn't real bad.
It's pretty normal for us to check everything, make sure the flanges are tight, make sure the lines are okay, the thermocouples are okay. But on this day, we're spread out pretty thin that day.
We had a lot of activity going on, a lot of tests occurring in the test cells, and so we were moving pretty quick to get all the work done that needed to be done.
Factor 2, it was a routine task.
One of the things we have to change is to remind people that because a task is routine, just because a task is routine, you don't treat it with any less care.
So the accident really involved a particular item that we use on a daily basis, which is called a lifting flange. We had been using these lifting flanges for about 20 plus years.
We've been reminded of the fact that a routine task can become, people can become complacent about the risks in it.
Factor 3, there were other things going on.
Is during this particular instance, there was a lot of activities going on at one time. So again, you're trying to work hard, you're trying to move fast, you're trying to do right by the company and customers and things of that nature.
Factor 4, the tool came from another facility.
The tool came in from navigation. It was the whole assembly already put together.
Thinking that it was okay, because it came from another place of ours. So I figured it was all hooked up right.
Factor 5, there was a mistake.
I didn't take the time to check something, and I should have.
On a normal day, we normally check everything, and this time we didn't.
Not being in a hurry, no. It was just overlooking things.
Never assume. Never assume. Always check, even though it's been checked.
The flange, which is a critical component to the lift, which wasn't installed properly, slipped and allowed the fixture to fall in the test cell.
Let's review what we've learned so far. It was a busy day, and the team was conducting a routine task. There were other distractions going on, as usual. A tool came in from another facility, and there was a mistake. It's important to realize that everyone makes mistakes. They can happen any time, to any of us. And yet, just because someone makes a mistake doesn't mean an incident happens. This is because our systems are designed to be strong enough to protect us when we make a mistake. Our systems should act as a safety net for when we, as humans do, fail.
We have a lot of processes and procedures, and then also our safety culture to make it not luck, right? We want to make sure that we do the 5 fundamentals, that we assess the risk, and we make sure that whether we hurt somebody or not during the course of the day isn't due to luck.
Everyone's looking out, trying their best to find mistakes and stopping it before it happens.
But sometimes, our system is not as effective as a safety net as it should be, and it fails.
Normally you do those safely and there's no incidents. What people need to realize is that more often than we think, we're in a hazardous situation that we don't recognize.
Our process was very dependent on people doing certain tasks. And so everything had to line up in order for that process to be safe.
What we need to do is establish how our controls or our procedures failed us. Get to the bottom of why this happened, and then implement some controls to prevent something like this from ever happening again.
So, how do we improve? We look for weaknesses in our barriers. We look for the times when we are relying on everything to line up perfectly, and we adjust those times to include effective safety nets. As we put more safety nets in place, we will protect more. It is these safety nets that increase the company's capacity to fail safely, to make a mistake without it resulting in a tragic outcome.
I think that we've gotten really good at identifying the real obvious hazards in our workplace, but where we really need to close the gap is to look for those hidden hazards and to manage the gap with our risk management so that we eliminate those hazards and really dig deep into where the true hazards exist and where an accident could pop up, so that we don't have any more of these hidden dangers and we don't have any more accidents like what we had that day.
That's why they make these cells, because they're made to hold in the damage that may happen if something explodes. The less people in there, the less danger of someone else getting hurt if something happens.
It's very important to stay out of the line of fire so that whenever we're lifting heavy components, and we do this worldwide in all of our shops, we need to make sure that employees are not in the line of fire.
Now we have sure stop rings that we have to put on after we put the flange on, and then put the sure stop ring on to make sure that nothing can fall.
We have our safety meetings every morning to check, just to talk, and just to make sure that everything's done like it's supposed to be done.
Now that we've had this opportunity to learn from this incident, we've implemented the red zone as another measure, as another administrative control to fill in that gap that we had in our process.
There's a red zone in the door that we're not allowed to let anybody pass when we have the tool suspended except lab technicians. Once we get it down in the hole about a foot, then we're allowed to go in and finish lowering it down.
To have someone which we call a lift supervisor stand back and watch the lift, not necessarily as part of the lift, not directing the cranes or the activity, but just a third party, if you will, to watch the lift and to look at every aspect of the lift to make sure there's no hidden hazard that is going to cause some accident or injury to occur.
But mainly it's just communication between the test lab people here and myself when it comes to lifting stuff like that. We communicate with each other, make sure everything's okay, that flanges are tight and all that other stuff so that nothing happens like that again.
So, what have we learned from this incident? We better understand the importance of expecting mistakes and having a system in place strong enough to handle those mistakes.
One thing is just to slow down, take a deep breath, step back 5 by 5, take a look at the risk, and making sure we're doing things safely every time.
The difference was literally inches between an employee being injured versus an employee losing his life.
So we can talk about how safety affects the bottom line and safer organizations are more profitable. We could talk about our customers, how they value people with a better safety culture. We could talk about statistics. At the end of the day, that doesn't matter. Baker Hughes is a very family-oriented company, and as such, we own each other's safety and well-being as well at work or in their personal lives.
There's a phrase that we used to use in the UK. You know, you need a constant sense of unease. You know, in the line of work that we do, you always have to be aware of the risk and hazard and constantly uneasy, so that you're hyper aware to the risks of whatever the task is that you're doing.
I think, you know, the scariest part of all this is that it happened in the blink of an eye. It happened to a large group of people. And from what you can see in the video, it happened so fast you can't react. So for those that think that they know better, or they've been doing the job for a long time, or that there's time to make a decision or get out of the way, it's very evident that's not the case. So hopefully this will be a very eye-opening video to people to learn from, to truly respect the risk and understand that when things go bad, you're not as much control as you think you are, which means you have to start the process with planning, risk assessment, and making sure we do the job safely every day.
Take some time to find the holes in your barriers, the weaknesses that can create holes. Then build your safety net to ensure we can fail safely without an incident.